Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Increase Your Odds, How to Give Funders What They Want. My name is David Gates and I'm part of the online education team here at GrantStation, and I'll be your host. Now, if you're like most nonprofits, you may be on a seemingly never-ending search for funding. But to truly be successful, you must consider the funder's concerns when providing financial support. Fortunately, we have Matt Hugg with us here today to show you how you can increase your chances of winning a grant award by understanding what funders look for. Matt is the president and founder of Nonprofit.Courses, an on-demand e-learning resource with thousands of courses specifically for nonprofit leaders, staff, board members, and volunteers. He's also the author of the Guide to Nonprofit Consulting and teaches nonprofit management at several universities via the web and in person in the United States, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And today he's going to share that knowledge and experience with you and show you how to give funders what they want. So please welcome Matt Hugg.
All right. Well, David, thank you very much. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real honor to be able to work with you. So I'll tell you where the origin of this is. I teach a grant writing class at a university here in the eastern part of the US in New Jersey. And one of the things that I've done is interview funders about what they want, and really kind of got behind the curtain to have a conversation with them about just what is it, that makes it work for them. And plus I've had my own, grant proposal writing experiences, so I was able to test some things out. And what I want to give you today is some of the things that I've been finding that are pretty consistent with folks, with what they tell me. So what we're going to do here is get into kind of 10 things. We're going to talk about how we see the grant makers all the way to connecting correctly with them. And of course, we're going to talk about program and budget and your finances and writing and all that. And just, and you'll see kind of a cadence we're going to go through, and I'll highlight different parts of this. So let's get started. Of course, all of this is so that you can avoid mistakes and be better equipped so that you know what to ask of them, and honestly what not to ask of them, and understand things from their point of view. And that's huge from what I've found, is that being able to understand their point of view makes all the difference in your being able to connect with them and them seeing you as a viable candidate for funding. So Dave, got a pop quiz here to start, because like any good teacher, I can't move forward without a quiz. So got a poll going here. What is the #1 thing that grant makers complain about for applicants? What do you think? All right. I feel like we need to have something that goes bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, that'd be going up pretty quick if it was ding, ding, ding in there.
Yeah, really. The people are really kind of chiming in here. This is good. Somebody okay, they got one person who says they never invite us to their parties. I love it. That might be it. That might be the answer. All righty. Okay.
For the results.
So here we go. Yeah, most people got it here, is that they don't read the guidelines. That is huge. And every time I talk to somebody about what is it, the #1 thing that people can do, it's the guidelines. They don't read the guidelines. Now, I will tell you that those people who put in, they treat us like ATMs, I hear that too. And that's really an important concept to keep in mind, is that, they think that, well, you just write a proposal and then you get money back, and like, what are we, your ATM, for grant money? And so that's kind of based on the fact that a lot of folks don't feel like they can, or they're afraid of making a relationship with a funder. And we'll talk about that. Can't write a good budget. Yeah, that's actually a concern as well, but certainly not like not reading the guidelines. Okay, thank you. And so #1, the problem is how we see the grant makers, right? Because like I say here, this is an issue. They seem like they hold all the power, right? that they are the people who are just, they have the money, you don't, you want the money, you have to do work with them. Well, yeah. I mean, from the grant writer's point of view, right? We talked about this, that they do feel like they are an ATM for so many organizations. A lot of times, those of us who are in the applicant shoes make this mistake of treating them like gods or goddesses. You know what? They're people. They put their shoes on the same way you do every single day. So treat them just like people and understand that they have problems just like you do. And I know that sounds kind of hokey, right? But so many times we put folks up on a pedestal here. And I will tell you that I have been told they don't want that so much. I mean, yeah, they want to be respected, right? They certainly don't want you to hide things from them. That's a major issue with that they find a lot, is that they don't get the full picture. I know that you have this reluctance to say, well, if I show them this, then they won't fund us, or they, we don't want to show them the bad part of what we do. Or no, they get it. They've been around the block. They know that there's no ideal organization. And by not hiding things, they may actually help you resolve whatever that is that you think is a problem. They certainly won't take the attitude of, I want to help you, right? So they help me help you. That's how most of them got into the business of being a funder, is that they wanted to help people meet their goals and meet their goals. We're going to talk about that in a second. You want to appreciate the fact that this is a stressful job. I mean, how many of us sit back and say, wow, wouldn't it be great to give away money? Wouldn't that be the coolest thing in the world? Yeah, except that you only have so much money to give. And so now, how do you turn around and tell somebody who has a really great program that you're not getting the money? Or, tell somebody else that there's something wrong with what they're doing, or there's a bad approach or something, or that you give money to somebody and things go wrong. It's a stressful job. Keep that into account when you're working with somebody. Have a little empathy for them. Okay, now, I need to minimize our risks while accomplishing our goals. One key word there used twice, our, not yours, ours. This is really important. They have goals. They have a mission. Their mission isn't to give you money. Their mission is to use you as the arms and legs so that their money is well cared for and to meet their goals. You got to hear that if you haven't, is that they have goals. You are simply a conduit for their goals. So if their mission is to address homelessness in a city, they don't have homeless programs to work with the homeless. They depend upon you for that. And so you're bringing something to the table there. That's important, that you are a partner with them, but a partner to accomplish their goals. Yeah, and doing that, they only have so much time, right? And that's the other thing I think we all forget, right, is that they have bosses too. And will their boss agree with whatever decision they're making? Because eventually, especially if it's a multi-layer, organizational structure at a funder, right, that you have a program officer has a boss, the boss has the head of the foundation, and then the head of the foundation has their board, right? Well, your project needs to move up through that chain. And if that program officer, at whatever level it is, right, says yes to what you're doing, they want to make sure that that's going to go through well and easy. And so your ability to make that easier for them is huge. Okay, why they might turn you down? Well, you don't show the confidence you can carry out their program, their proposed program. In other words, you haven't connected your mission with their mission, and to say, we can meet your goals by doing this program that we have that is in our mutual interest. And you don't communicate that well. And I'm not even talking about the writing part. I'm just talking about the informal communication and discussion. It might also be writing, but it's not just the writing. Your attitude is off-putting. I have seen this too many times where an applicant will be, well, you have to give us money because, it's something happened or it's what you do or whatever. No, 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 no. They don't have to do anything. So just, be respectful with them that way. Applicant doesn't respond to their communications, right? They might send you a note. If nothing else, whitelist their email address. Make sure that their email address is approved to come through your system. And it may be, if you're using Google, it hits your primary account, your primary tab, so that you see when you hear from them all the time, right? And of course, you will hear, the program's not within their mission guidelines. And so you have to take a step back and say, gee, what did I do here? What didn't I read right? Okay, so what you can do, well, like we said, you can help them help you. Do the things that you make their life easier so that you can get an answer from them. Maybe it's a yes, writing something up for them, or giving them language that they can take other places. Whatever it is, help them help you, move your program along here. Expect a relationship. This is huge. Almost every person I've spoken to on the funder side says that they want a good, genuine relationship built on mutual respect and mutual goals as part of that work that they do with you. So don't be nervous, right? You're going to have people come visit you. That's great, right? It just relax, show them around, put on your best face, right? It's okay. People kind of expect that, right? But if something goes wrong, they get it. They've been there. Just treat them with respect, but expect a relationship. Never, like I said before, never think they have to fund you for any reason whatsoever. If in doubt, ask, right? They expect you to ask. They know there may not be 100% clear all the time, right? But also follow the rules and only present proposals when they say that they fund whatever it is that they say they fund, right? Don't pitch things out to them that aren't part of their mission, or that you're, want to start and it doesn't, whatever that is, right? Follow their rules. I think I've said this enough times now, right? In different ways. But I think that might be really the most important takeaway here. Okay. So your program pick. Obviously, this is important for a lot of reasons, right? You have something that you want to get done and that it's important to you, but it's important also to make sure that it is a high priority for your organization and that you're just not pulling something out of your back pocket because you think you can get the money, because they're going to sniff that out pretty easily. You want to ask for something that's important to you and that meets their objectives. Okay. So the grant maker's view, right? They're asking that the first thing they ask, is this meeting our goals? Not your goals, our goals, the funder's goals, right? What is it that you are presenting to them that is going to help them meet whatever mission there is? Because remember, they got a founder, they have a board, they go through the same process you do about having a mission statement and having a strategic plan and all the things that you should be doing as an organization. They're doing those things too. And then it all comes down at the bottom, right, to goals and how they meet their goals. You, again, are those means of meeting their goals. They're going to ask, is what you're showing them doing that? What's the impact of the program? Now, it doesn't have to be huge, thundering herds of whatever, right? But is it doing what it says? And is it making a difference based on their goals? And that's really, if you help more people than less, that might be a good thing, right? But maybe that's not what they're after. Maybe they want to see a pilot to prove something to a small group that then can be iterated out. Whatever it is, right? Just look at what is the impact of what you're doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about outcomes and outputs, right? And we want outcomes. What's the outcomes here? So do they know what they're doing? You, as the proposed organization, right? And this is where I get back to something I talk about a lot in my classes, which is expert versus well-intended. In fact, I was just having a conversation before this with somebody about this very point, that there are a lot of organizations or a lot of proposals that come in that are well-intended. They want to solve homelessness. They want to save a beach or whatever it is, right? But the proposal makes it very clear that they are not the expert in doing that, or at least have the background that has shown that they have the expertise either educationally or functionally, that yeah, they can do this. That's really important before you even get into writing a proposal. Make sure that you are lining up your expertise so that you can answer the question for them. Yeah, we know what we are doing. That will knock you off the list real quick if you give the impression that that's not the case. Okay, is the program too big for them? Something else I was just talking to somebody about, all right? This fellow was telling me that he works with community groups, and they said, well, gee, what kind of proposals have you done? They asked him, and he said, well, I've done them in the low thousands, 10,000s. I've even done $1 million. And suddenly, oh, we want the $1 million, right? They're not ready for it. And the grant maker can sniff that out pretty easily too. Is it too big for it? Think about all the people that you hear of who win the lottery and then totally, their life unravels, right? Grant maker is really cautious about that. They don't want to give you too much, more than you can handle. So ask yourself, is this something that we can handle? And is it going to look like we can handle? If you're asking for money that's more than your budget already, don't even, bother, right? Because clearly you haven't shown you can handle that. You have to build up that ability. At least you have to build it up in the eyes of the funders. So start a little bit lower, get bigger and bigger, and they will see that you are growing and able to handle bigger and bigger dollars. Don't just jump in for this. How can I tell if the program succeeds? This is a key question. It's not a matter of how many, cheeks and seats, as they say, or whatever, how many people you have sitting in a classroom or something. It's what is the impact? What are the outcomes going to be that are going to impact the lives that you are working with? And that is a really difficult thing to evaluate sometimes. And maybe you want to bring somebody in from the outside who can be a third-party view on this. But if you have experience in showing how your programs succeed, not just the fact that they do, but in what ways they do, that's going to make a major difference to a funder. Are you open to suggestions? That comes back to help us help you. Remember, they have been around to see your proposal, a dozen other ones in the round you're on right now, and hundreds maybe before that they have worked with successfully, and they have chosen not to work with. And if sometimes you'll get a program officer who will say, if you do this or that, right, if they really want to see you succeed, they will suggest things or turn you down and make suggestions, right? But you have to be open to those suggestions, and you have to show them that, yeah, this is flexible. I can work with you, and over time, that will really help you and them. And of course, will they communicate progress going forward? And that's really important because you know how it is. If you just throw something out there, let me put it this way. There are no ta-da moments in a relationship with a funder. Nobody's going to stand at an easel, I hope you never do, and have the drape over the chart and pull it off and say, ta-da, and look what we've done, right? No, you need to communicate all along the way. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want to see that you are open to do. So they might turn you down though, because whatever you've proposed just isn't a priority for them this year. It's really hard to discern this, because really, unfortunately, you only have a backward look. You can get their 990s or their annual report or their website, right? That only tells you what they funded before, maybe not necessarily how it's nuanced into what they want to do this year. So it's going to happen. don't worry about it, right? And that's a good question to ask. Well, gee, where did we miss your priorities? Because it looked like we had them, in a very kind, respectful way, right? Your organization is not located in our geographic area of funding. That happens all the time. That's actually a guideline thing you should be able to look for pretty easily. Still, people, that happens. You think you're in the Philadelphia area like I am, but they define it as, 5 counties instead of 7 counties, whatever it is. Your proposal is highly partisan. Yeah, you really got to know your audience there. My sense is, that you know who you are writing to, and just most funders that I know really are not necessarily, well, a lot of foundation funders are not necessarily interested in getting into what we might call, well, I don't know, just if you're looking at writing a partisan proposal for whatever, it might be perfectly fine for what you do. Just make sure you're applying to the people who are open to that point of view. And your proposal failed to demonstrate a benefit to us, right? So maybe it's us as the people we serve, or maybe it's us as an organization. Again, look back at their mission and see what that's all about. David, I see a couple questions. Is there anything we want to jump in here with?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions just kind of related to communication. So
Sure.
Carol said, how often should we communicate with funders? We send acknowledgement letters, empowerment fund letters twice a year, the annual report. And kind of jumping off of that, Michelle said, how do you prove to them that you will communicate progress? Do you specifically say this in a proposal, even if the funder doesn't ask for a communication plan? So they were those couple of questions surrounding communication.
Yeah, that's excellent. So communicating with them, if you've already gotten money from them, if it's like between grant cycles, you want to ask them. One of the things I've been told, and actually we're going to talk about a little bit later on here, is that they don't just, funder doesn't want to be on your mailing list, because they would just be on everybody's mailing list. And that actually can hurt you rather than help you, because they might just block your email or just throw your stuff in the trash and not even give it a look. So you want to communicate with them about, what would be helpful, again, back to them. What do they want that would be beneficial to them? And they might say, hey, turn it off until you come to the next grant cycle. They might say, oh yeah, keep us on this report or that report, but really do your best to be very tailored to them that way. And so far as leading up to a proposal, unless you already have a relationship with them, don't add them to your list leading up to a proposal. That's not going to help you very much. You would, it's not, again, they just get a lot of stuff. And so put it even more, I mean, we think of opt-in as a checkbox, right? And that's a kind thing to do, or like the right thing to do. No. This is more than a checkbox. This is, hey, how about a phone call or some sort of personal communication where you get the hyper checkbox. They really want to hear from you. And I'm sorry, the next part was, what was that next one?
The next part was, so let me pull back that up.
Sorry.
You specifically say this in a proposal, even if the funder doesn't ask for a communication plan.
Oh, yeah. I think it's, yeah, definitely put in, if you have room for it, if there's a good place to put it, then sure, put it in. We want, even the words of, we want to communicate on the schedule most helpful to you.
Yeah.
Right. To be determined, as most helpful to you. Again, make it so that you are not giving them something they don't want, but that you are giving them an option to receive what they might find helpful.
Okay.
Don't, you might, propose a schedule, say like our typical, and that might be good because it shows you've done this with others. Say our typical communication plan is to have 3 contacts a year, or whatever, right? But it's tailored to your interest or needs. Again, putting it back to them, not just pitching stuff out.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So, thought we were done this one. So what can you do to talk about what we just addressed before? Why, from their point of view, I'm just going to go back here and show, right, the problem you pick, right, is read their materials. We talked about that. Network in their circles. And that is all about, get to know the people they know, get to know who else is they funded, right? Talk to other grant recipients. Again, this is not, don't treat them like an ATM where you just send in the papers and expect the money back, right? Use your informal resources to connect, if not directly to them, to learn about them, to learn what their preferences are. Of course, go online, right? Do your due diligence that way. And when I say engage a professional, yeah, maybe to write the proposal, but also to do some background research. What is it that you need to know that isn't becoming obvious that maybe a professional who has access to restricted databases might be able to find, or who has developed a file because maybe others of their clients have worked with the same funder and that they have background information that they've collected. There are a lot of good people out there who are professional researchers. If you don't know the APRA, that's an organization that is the professional ethical fundraising research people. And it would be worth checking that out. I think it's aprahome.org, but don't quote me on that. Okay, quiz, right? The proposal budget is, and David, got a poll sitting around there?
I
Here
do.
we go.
There we go.
It's an informal spending guideline, absolute hard, fast plan, a living document, or a serving suggestion like you see in a cereal box. What do you think? And I see we have another question out there.
Yeah. So Roxanne says, how can we best show a need for funding to expand our mission when things are going well?
Actually, you know what? That's an excellent question, because we have this idea in our mind, well, that we need help because when things are bad, we need help, right? But it turns out that when things are bad, people don't want to help you. It's just, and let's come back to that in a second, because I really think that's a good question. So yeah, it's an informal spending guideline. Yeah, but you know what? We are going to go with, here we go. We're going to go with absolute hard and fast or living document. These two really depend on the funder. A lot of funders, I'm not going to say most because I really don't know most, but is going to treat it like you guys say here. It's a living document. You kind of review it as you move along. If things change, you can talk to them again if you have that relationship. But some will say, hey, this is what you said. That's it. You spend a nickel one way or the other, right? There's a problem here. So you need to know that going in. Certainly not a serving suggestion like you see in a cereal box. And it's more than an informal guideline to spending. Just for the people who put that in, the 17 of you, just keep in mind that you want to be detailed, and you want to give them something that they can really get their teeth into and understand, but then get a feeling whether they are the hard and fast ones or the living document ones. So David, back to the question about, we're doing good. How can we show that we need something?
Yeah.
And like I said, people don't want to put good money after bad. I mean, it sounds like it is. It's a saying, right? But it's true that they want to see that you can handle things. If you have a good track record and are successful at something, they'll want to get them on board. Don't be afraid of putting out a proposal for something that's successful, or that you either want to enhance that success, or you want to somehow build on that, maybe do more of the same thing, iterate it out in more places or whatever. That's a good thing. Folks will say, hey, I want to be with them. They can handle their money, because remember, what they are doing is associating their name with yours. And they have an annual report too, just like you do. They want to use that annual report to point to a program to say, hey, we did good here. And if it's a slam dunk that yours is already successful and they can get on board with that, I think that's a nice win. A lot of places will see that as a nice win-win for themselves and for you. Is that another question there, or is that the same one?
Oh, that's the same one.
Okay, let's move ahead then. All right. Can they judge it from your budget? Like that little thing there? Okay, so Your budget really is more than a list of expenses. It is how you understand your mission and, and who you serve, and your funders know that. What's the saying that is show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities, right? They get that, and they want to see that you are spending their money well and have plans for it and are detailed so that they can trust you. Because budgets are also about trust, right? They want to be able to trust that you are doing what you said with their money, and that's how they see it. It's their money. So, they're going to ask, is that budget detailed enough? Are you drilling down into the places that really are important to us, that are going to make a difference in how this program moves forward? Do you have all the right elements? I mean, that's, you can go Google budgets for grants, and you'll find dozens of places, and look on Nonprofit.Courses, I have them, what needs to be in a budget for a successful grant application or a kind of program you're doing, and make sure you are checking those boxes, because they already know those boxes. They want to make sure that you have them there. Are you asking for too much or too little? Right? Because they know how much things cost. And if you are asking for not enough, they're going to know that. In fact, that's a really big trap that a lot of nonprofits fall into, is trying to bid themselves down, where you end up not being able to pay for the program you promised with the money they're giving you, because you promised you could only do it for this much money. No, that is not fair to you, to the people you serve, or the other people who make gifts or somehow fund your organization. So, if it's a formal match, if you come in and say, listen, if you give us this money, we'll put this much money to it, that's fine, right? You're upfront about it, that works. But if you are asking for too little money, that's a problem. And the other side of it, don't pad your budget. Don't ask for more money and say, well, we're just going to add this because in case. No. Ask for what you need, right? But put a contingency in, sure, right? Because there's always something that could happen. And so, but formally put it in as, hey, we're going to put in this contingency in case something goes wrong. And that, a lot of funders will be okay with that. But does it comply with their rules, with the funder's rules? That's really important to remember, because they, like some funders don't like overhead, right? They don't say, you don't put in an overhead rate for them like you would a government grant. Sometimes you can do that, right? Whatever the rules are, follow their rules. Okay, why they might turn you down? The budget isn't clear, correct, or even provided. I know a lot of times folks don't put in a budget. Sorry, you don't get the money, right? But no, you want to make sure it is clear and that they can go down and know exactly what their money is buying by giving you their money that you say on that piece of paper. Of course, it's not within the funding range, which means you're probably asking for more. If it is above what you are asking for, then of course tell them why you are asking for that other money, or why that that gap is there and how you're going to get that other money. A lot of folks fall into this trap of only asking for the big grant. Well, they fund from $100,000 to $500,000. So you say, oh, I'm going to go for that 5. No, go for what you need. They will know, especially if it's your first time applying to them, right? It's like you're trying to hit a home run the first time you're at bat. Let them understand you, get to know you, develop a long-term relationship, not going just for that big home run or the 99-yard touchdown. Okay, your budget was unrealistic in estimates, up or down, for equipment, supplies, personnel, whatever it is. You have to understand what it's going to cost. If, for example, it's going to cost more than what folks might expect, let's say you're in the New York metropolitan area and everything costs much more, you just need to say, hey, these are estimates based on our local economy, right? Because it's going to cost more to hire somebody here than it is in Lincoln, Nebraska. So you want to make sure that you make that clear if you do have that, something seems askew. Your budget doesn't match the benefits. Again, back to asking for too much or too little, right? So if you are delivering a serious bargain for them, you need to say why, like we discussed earlier. And if it's way off on the other end, you need to explain why too. And of course, arithmetic errors, honestly, anymore, there's just no excuse. Line up everything on a spreadsheet, make sure the math works, double check, triple check it, because that's going to knock you out real quickly. It's just, how that works. Okay, what you can do, create a professional looking budget. Nothing fancy, but spreadsheet is good, and just make sure everything adds up. The columns are straight. You're using, double zeros everywhere, and all. Just make sure it looks okay. Be thoughtful in your narrative. The numbers only can say so much. Remember, humans learn by storytelling. So if you can tell a story about why, and a very short, maybe a one-line story about each of those areas, that's going to really help you out a lot. Back to using realistic figures, we kind of talked about that, right? Show all expenses. Don't assume expenses into others. Show them all out and show the detail, or at least have it available, so that you can add up things that, that come up to an odd number or something, and be able to explain that. Talked about lowballing, never, and the other side, don't pad the numbers. Again, follow the rules, check the math, and ask yourself, and this is really the most important thing, if it was my money, would I buy this? Would this be something that I would do if I was spending my money on this, given what I'm looking at here in front of me, so far as, my budget I put together? That's a good litmus test. And ask other people too, would you buy this? So David, got another question there?
We do. Yeah, so there are a couple of questions. One specifically related to budgets was, how do you provide a detailed budget if you have to use a budget breakdown sheet provided by the organization?
Right. That's a great place to do your best, obviously, with what they give you. Put it in the correct place. But then also, if you are able to do a budget narrative, to maybe have a line or two explaining, we're happy to provide the details below this level when you request it, or something. In other words, let them know that that this may not be the best way to reflect it, but you want to work within their guidelines, because what they're trying to do is compare apples to apples. They want to compare you to somebody else who is doing something similar, another proposal. That's why they have that sheet, right? But just make it known that you can, provide more information in a different way that might be a little more explanatory there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then one other question Elizabeth asked was, funders often ask for innovation. It is hard to always come up with innovative ways to do our core work. We don't want mission drift just to make an innovative project. How do we balance this?
Oh boy, I love that that phrase mission drift was used. Again, something I was talking about with somebody earlier today. I mean, it's just chasing the money bad thing. Yeah, I think a lot of that is finding and selecting the right funder. I mean, there are some funders that are going to want tried and true things, right? This is also where you might want to look at, yeah, you can bring your own kind of nuance to whatever it is you're doing, and doing it your way. It's innovative for you, that's fine. But this is maybe where you need to look outside grant work entirely, and talk to major funders, your major individual givers, and say, hey, we've done this innovative thing. Now we need to iterate it. How can you help us do that? Yeah, I know that's a quandary. It really is. And because so many foundations see their role as, being the cutting edge, right? But being the cutting edge, sometimes, you just need to do plain stuff.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and that's just because you want to do stuff that's proven to solve a problem, not being cutting edge that doesn't solve the problem. So that may not be the right funder for you.
All right, good. And then one other question from Luke. How do we deal with an audited budget request when you're just submitting a proposal?
An audited budget request.
If the funder's
So
requesting an audit, so it comes
yeah,
down to following the directions.
Yes. So if I understand that right, I mean, there are different ways, like you have audits and I forget there. In fact, we talk about this a little later. Um, and you want to give them obviously what is required by your level of being a nonprofit. So if in your state it's 250,000 and above, you need an audit, and below, right? You want to give them that, give them the latest of whatever you have. If you didn't, if an audit isn't required, but they want an audited budget statement, then I think that's a place where you need to call them and ask, what, tell me, this is what I have, this is what you want, is that okay? That's a good place, that's a good communication point,
Yeah.
so that they understand that maybe an audit isn't required of your level of budget. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. One last question is related to budgets, and then I think we'll move on. Victor was asking about if you're looking to hire an executive director for an all-volunteer organization, would that just be placed in the budgets?
Well, I know there are a couple of views on this. I mean, the answer might be yes. You could say that person, you could um, make them part of overhead. It's a bad word, I know, but it is something that, it's administrative expenses. You could take a portion of their time and say, hey, this person is a paid person on our staff. Uh, they are going to spend 10% of their time on this, so 10% of the salary goes in. You could, approach it not at all, and just say, if that's a whole volunteer run thing, it really depends on what impact they're going to have in it, in that program, but make it related to the program that you are proposing and the the nature of the program you're doing. It's not don't stretch that. Don't make it kind of try to get their salary in when it just doesn't fit. That's
Mhm.
probably the most important part of that.
Right, perfect. So yeah, I think we can continue on.
Well, in fact, we're going to dance with the finance. So nobody wants to throw good money away. We talked about that. So how do you handle can you show how you handle money? They want to know, do you have an accountant? Do you have financial statements? Do the numbers show a stable organization, right? And really what they want to understand is that you know how to handle money. And they are obviously concerned, is this project too big for them? Or conversely, is the problem too small and that, this is going to get lost in their accounting? So another concern, and I can't say that everybody kind of comes to this, but just keep it in the back of mind, is they don't want the money you are giving them to fill another budget hole that you have. First of all, you shouldn't be doing that. That's unethical, if not illegal, right? But that's a concern. If they can see that your budget has issues, right? They might be concerned, oh, they're going to pay their salaries out of this and then try to find other money to make it up, and this is going to be too much for us, right? They don't want to get involved with that. So that's what the kind of questions they are asking. Of course, they might turn you down because your financials are just in bad shape, right? They see a potential for a problem there. You might lack the resources to perform the project. I mean, yeah, they're giving you the resources to do it, right? But they might say, wow, this is more than what they usually do, or they don't know how to handle this kind of thing, or whatever it is. They might deem you not ready for funding because you're asking for more money than they think that you're used to handling. They want to see you starting lower. They don't see how the applicant, this is a huge question, how will the applicant sustain the program after our funding is gone? Getting back to that question about being innovative all the time, right? Well, this is huge. Actually, this is one of the hardest questions to answer in my grant writing class, is how is this program going to move forward after that grant ends? Because they don't want to be there forever. They want to get it going and get out and do something else. And, really, whether your material is disorganized or incomplete, it's really going to reflect a lot in your financials, even though it isn't a financial thing that you're doing here, whatever that part is. So think of this just like a bank loan. They want to review you just like a bank would. So if you have, right, audit, review, compilation, whatever level it is that you're required to do by your state, make sure you have that available. If not provided, maybe they're asking for it. Show financial competence on your board. Do you have people who are overseeing your organization that have some financial acumen that gives them confidence that, yes, somebody knows what's going on here and what's happening? Look at your CFO or whatever that financial officer is and make sure that their credentials are up to snuff and that they can show that, you know, they're the real deal. Make organizational budgets available for the last several years and explain if you have a financial issue, it happens, especially in the last few years, right? Talk about it. Don't hide it. Talk about it. You may not get the grant because of it, right? But they might also be willing to work with you in getting you a position to get a grant. So don't hide financial details, even though it's just so tempting sometimes. But especially in the last few years, you know, people get it. So be upfront. Another set of questions there.
With these ones, I'll hold off on these so we can kind of keep the flow
Sounds
going.
good. All right. So they're tapped out. Yeah, it happens, right? Too many proposals, right? They just can't handle it. Their legacy commit. These are the commitments they've made before that they're still paying off, so that now they don't have as much money this year to give as they may have had past years. Remember, that's in their cycle. It's not something you necessarily see, but that might be in the back of their mind, right? Their market performance and their endowment was bad, right? So remember, a lot of these organizations will have like a multi-year average that they give out money on. So it's the average of their endowments market performance over time. But if you've had a few bad years, they might really reduce their giving. Or they have an outside funder like a company or something that had a bad year. Or, you know, you don't make the deadline and they use that as a reason not to give you the money. And I know foundations that do that. So that's another thing. It's in the guidelines. All right. Yeah, they had limited funds. The market was down. Other proposals like yours, they like theirs better. Maybe those other organizations seem more stable. Late application. And, you know, don't be afraid of getting less than you requested. You might want to have in mind where else you can make up those funds for or reduce your program somehow. That's okay. They will, you know, they might work with you if they want to give you the money and see you move forward. So what you can do, apply early. Never, you know, depend on FedEx or somebody sending that. There's always going to be a mistake. There's always going to be a problem. Apply early. Don't apply for the maximum. We've talked about that. Be open to applying again. You know, some funders will turn you down because this is the first time you've applied and they expect if you're really serious, you'll come back to them. So it's okay. Be open to doing it again or break the project into parts. Again, earlier today, talking to somebody who we were saying, yeah, sometimes you don't get the big gift, but over time, you end up breaking that into smaller parts and other funders actually fund those smaller parts and you get what you want. And, you know, with that in mind, think about other funders who can take on some of those parts. That's okay. All right. One of the greatest joys of GrantMaker is, you want to pitch that out there, David?
Yeah, let me pull that up. All right, so it should be launched.
All right. Ooh, seeing their funded programs stand on their own. Yeah, okay, so yeah, you guys are getting this. You're right. You know, they don't want to fund your program in perpetuity. And that's just a real issue that you've got to keep in mind, that you're probably only going to get one cycle at things. If you get two and they're open to it, you know, you're blessed. But yeah, don't depend on that. Bragging, you know, the one person who put that out there, that is actually not a terrible, unreasonable response. And you'll see that sometimes because that's part of their marketing, to go out and brag to people, right? But the biggest part of that is they're going to brag about seeing that program stand on its own. And of course, then they want to hear you're saying thank you, right? Too many people forget about saying thank you in life generally, and particularly to foundations. Again, you're not going to thank your ATM, but you're going to thank them. So, all right. So can they see your future? Right. So is this a one-time program or an ongoing effort? They want to know. That's really important to them. Right. They also want to know if you're going to become dependent upon them. And like we said in that last poll, right, they don't want you to become dependent because they want flexibility for their program. And honestly, they're human, and they will say, oh, it's terrible, all these people are losing this because we're not funding it again, but they don't want to be responsible for that. That's your job. Plans for getting funded, we talked about that. How do we know if the program is successful? That's huge. They want to figure out how you are going to say, hey, we win here, or oh, there's a problem. And you know what? Having a problem isn't the worst thing in the world, because they know that there's some risk involved, especially if you get these innovation things right. But having a benchmark to say, yeah, we did this or not, that's really important. And that's sometimes really hard to do. There are professional program evaluators out there, and it's if you kind of search around a bit, you'll find them. If not, pop me a note. That people will be able to say, yes, a program was good or not, and provide a third-party objective view. What's their long-term impact of our money, and how will we look, right? How will the funder look after the project is over? Will they look successful? Will they be able to brag that they did something meaningful? Does it fulfill their mission? Right? They're going to turn you down maybe because they don't do multi-year projects. How, they don't see the project going after their funding ended because they're not seeing it in the materials you're providing, that you're doing anything, or you haven't made a commitment to that. They don't agree with your evaluation methods. That's a biggie, right? This is again where you need to be expert in showing not only what you do programmatically, but also expert in saying, yeah, we know how to evaluate a program, whether it's good or not, right? And you may not have the experience, or you just don't have enough staff. It's one thing to be lean in staff, right? But if you're proposing a program that requires staff, you need to have staff. Maybe that's going to be in the proposal, but it might be staff you already have on board that you can dedicate, and just make sure that you make clear that you're going to be staffed properly. Of course, what can you do, right? Outcomes are good, right? How many people you have in a room is good, but how many lives you changed among those people is the most important, and how you change those lives. So you want outputs, not outcomes, right? Logic model, input, output, outcome, output. Output is your important key here. Highlight staffing competency and success. It's really important, right? You've done it before, you can do it again, maybe even not at your organization, right? People say, well, we're new. How do we do this? How do we show we're good? Well, the people you have on your team, have they done it before? If they have that experience, that's a good way of talking about that. Use grant funding for discrete projects. Yes, right? Don't use it all over the place and for annual funds sometimes. Specific plans for future funding, make sure you show that, and strengthen other revenue generation activity, not just grants. That's really important. Show a variety of revenue generations so that they understand you are a stable organization and can continue things over time. Of course, writing is really important. What they want to know, is this stuff make sense, right? It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It just has to be intelligible. And you're writing to intelligent non-experts. Unless you know you're writing to an expert, right? Consider them intelligent non-experts. Watch the jargon, right? Watch the expressed words that are going to take things out one way or another. You want intelligent non-experts. Are there strong narratives, right? That, remember, humans learn by stories, not by just pitching out numbers. Are there good numbers to support? They go back and forth. Graphics and charts, if you're able to do them, are really huge because pictures count. It really is 1,000 words. And of course, they're going to say, well, the project description wasn't clear. They couldn't follow the narrative. Basically, that you're not giving enough substance. Your writing writing is important. It is grant writing, right? So don't try to be fancy with it. Try to be express yourself clearly. And maybe they're going to say, you didn't come across as an expert. That's a really important thing. Or you were too detailed or not detailed enough. There's a balance. Of course, spell check, have it reviewed by an outsider, hire a writer, use Grammarly. I'm a big Grammarly fan. We talk about AI and Chat GPT. I just actually this morning working with that, did a lot today. Really, it's good fodder. It is never going to be your final copy, at least in the way it exists now. So make sure that you are using things that you're having 2 or 3 people read stuff through, clear graphics, remove jargon, and cite sources. This is going to make you seem like an expert when you cite sources, just like you did in college. That's huge, and that's really important. And did you succeed, right? They're going to ask, how can I tell? Back to evaluation methods. Are you following a logic model that you plainly lay out? Are you showing me outcomes, not just outputs? And do you need an evaluator? And that's okay. They might even want to bring that on, right? So let's see here. So they're going to say, well, things are too complicated. The evaluation method needs to be clean and easy to use and simple to understand. And if you're going to use an accumulation of different kinds of methods, that's fine, but show how they come together. You may not seem to know enough about what you're doing to judge success. You want to be expert, not well-intended. Your definition of success is really an output, not an outcome. You're saying, hey, we have 50 people there, we're successful, and you're not talking about how you change those lives. And that's really important because they're interested in the outcome, not the output, unless they say expressly otherwise. So make sure your goals are clear, they align with your mission, know how evaluations are conducted in the discipline. That's important, right? That's about being an expert. Quantitative and qualitative methods, and look at meaningful outcomes, goals, and not necessarily output numbers. Okay, now, I know we're kind of breaching our time here, I think, right, David?
We're getting close to the end, but
Okay.
if someone does need to leave a little bit early, they will get the full recording and the slides next week, so we can run a little bit
Sounds
over here.
good. So we'll just roll through this. I don't want to give it too short shrift here. So question is, right, their rules rule. And this is huge, right? Applications on time, read the guidelines, right? When was the last time they applied? That's important. Are there other applicants from this same organization? That is a major issue. You want to make sure you're coordinating your organization so that, when they say they don't take more than one application from any organization and they take the first one, you don't want the first one to be the one that you didn't want to see applied. It was only asking for 5,000 when they could have asked for 25 or 50,000. So that's important to coordinate internally. Is it in their format and complete? You'd be surprised how many incomplete applications are received by organizations every day. And it's like, it's a non-starter. That just takes it off the table to start. Did they provide the supplemental materials we requested? I go through an exercise in my class where we pull out a lot of supplemental materials like 990s, like annual reports, like marketing material, like board lists, like staff lists, so that that every person in the class goes away having a mini library that they built themselves of what is needed for most proposals. And so when something comes up and you say, oh, I need X, Y, or Z, boom, 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 pick it up and we're ready to go. Or if they don't have it handy, they know where to get it, like in the president's office or with a CFO or something. And so they'll also want to know, have we funded them before? Because, maybe they don't only fund you once every 5 years or something. This next one's really important. This one here, did they follow our rule? Oops. We'll scoot through here. So does it look like you've read their instructions, right? Didn't complete, you can go through here. Did your writing cut off, right? Like you just put it up in the box and it truncated it, right? Because you didn't read the fact that, it was too big for that box. That happens more than you think. Didn't provide the support material, didn't meet the deadline. Staff contact. This is really important because a lot of foundations, a lot of funders have a rule about contacting either staff or board before applying, and whether you should or shouldn't. Some will say, yes, contact staff, never contact board. Some say proposals only come through the board. Some, whatever it is, know what it is, because you will be caught one way or another if you do not do that correctly. And if a board member says, oh, I know somebody on that board, I'll go talk to so-and-so, stop and explain to them that and I know it's hard, but you don't want to put your proposal in jeopardy because of that problem. All right, so talked about this a lot, right? Reading instructions and all the materials. In fact, I say read the instructions before you start, make your proposal, and then read the instructions after you're done and go back and look at the proposal. Did we do all these things, right? Just make it part of your habit. And if you can develop a book, I always recommend to people is something called the E-Myth, which is talks about systems and businesses, right? And it's really good because what Gerber says is, hey, if you put together these systems, you are able to be consistent over time so that then you don't end up with mistakes because you're trying to do each one kind of on the fly uniquely. And that's really important to talk about when we're talking about grant proposals. If you can do it in a systematic way, you're going to cut down a lot of these errors we're looking at here. All right. And finally, connecting correctly. They're going to ask themselves, have they heard of you? My mother would say, your reputation precedes you. That's part of this. Okay. Have you met anybody on their board leadership? Right. So they're going to ask themselves, do they know the nonprofit? Do they know anybody on the board? Does anybody have connections with them? What's their reputation, right? Are there conflicts of interest that we have? Because they want to kind of pre-vet you and say, well, gee, this looks good, but if I've never heard of them, I'm putting my reputation at risk with their name. And so they might need to step up a bit more. Whereas if they know you because they've heard of you, or you have, you get good visibility out in the community or whatever, right? They're going to say, well, I want to be part of that, or as opposed to having to question who you are. So really important that, your external marketing might actually have a major impact on your funding, especially in close communities. So they're going to turn you down because they never heard of you. Maybe you just started. Maybe, you did the taboo thing and contact somebody you shouldn't have. You didn't make them aware of potential conflicts of interest. They don't know your staff. Again, back to that relationship. You want to have a relationship with these people, and you want to have it appropriately based on their rules. So whether it's reputationally or direct, build a relationship with them so that when they ask these questions, you can knock all these off. Right? So market your organization, highlight your staff accomplishments, make people aware that this is coming up so that nobody steps on somebody's toes accidentally. Ask them, if somebody knows the funder, that's great. And then find out whether it's appropriate to make that contact. Give if somebody, and it happens, a board member will say, oh, I know so-and-so, I'm going to do this, right? And it's against the rules. Just call the funder and give them a heads up. They get it. They have a board too. They understand that people will do things that maybe they think they can go around the rules, right? And you might get some empathy points that way. So that may not be a total non-starter, again, if you're ahead of it and can explain what's going on. Because, what have we learned here overall? Funders want to be successful. They're risk adverse. They don't want to put their money in places that looks like it's going to be bad, right? They want to be good and do good things, and you can make them successful. They want to help you, and so that's just go with the idea that they're on your side. They're not opponents, and they're not, coming from on high to bless you with this money. Your proposal is more than the writing. It is the whole package, starting with the communication and budget and the writing, but it's also, your reputation and how you work with them. Your preparation before you even put pen to paper or, finger to keyboard is going to make a big difference in your success, how well you're prepared. And, your success is tied to their success. Your partners in this, if they know that you understand that, that's gold. That makes a big difference. All right. You want to get a hold of me? There it is. Please check out Nonprofit.Courses. Lots of information there. A lot of it is going to be free and easy to get to. In fact, most of it is. Please check it out. So, David, other things to talk about, or?
Yeah, just kind of a couple questions that we'll finish up with here. So Heather asked earlier on, we usually ask for general operating support. Any adjustments to your advice today if it's a general operating request?
Yeah, interesting. You could break it up into specific budget items that you like, if you always are going to ask for paper, I don't know, I'm just making this up, ask for a grant to pay for your paper and printing, or if something is, because you're always going to ask for something that's less than your total budget. So make it a targeted amount and think of it like annual fund, like you would a direct mail piece, which you might ask, instead of asking for the big black hole, you ask for, can you fund some specific thing? People tend to like to pay for specific things, not just throw their money into that big area.
Okay, great. And then the last question we'll go through here, a couple questions just about new organizations. So for new organizations, what do you suggest as far as what grant makers to go after? Because most won't fund new programs. And then Suzanne, kind of bouncing off of that, said, any advice to new nonprofits that don't have a lot of financial records to provide?
Yeah, the financial records are going to be where your sticky point is, because like I mentioned earlier, you can play off of the experience of the people you are working with. Like if you have certain staff or certain people who have experience on your board in that problem, and maybe you can do that even with finance to show that you are credible because these people have had experience. Now, that also may be where you get into partnerships. You might want to partner with another organization that has a track record, that you provide the program, and that they're kind of working with you on this to provide backup. You might connect with community foundations somehow, but the idea is, because honestly, starting up is always hard. So you want to ally yourself with folks that have a proven track record, so that their reputation helps you with your reputation. And then in exchange, you maybe are providing something that they are not able to, either to their clients or to the community or something.
Perfect. That's great information or great advice. So I think that's all the time we have for questions for today. If something pops up, you can always email us at info@grantstation.com and we can get an answer for you. A couple of additional notes before we go. As a reminder, GrantStation's summer membership sale is on right now, where you can get a 1-year membership for $179 or a 2-year membership for $219. We have that link in the chat right now. We have a feedback form that's going to pop up after the webinar to thank you for taking the time to help us out by providing feedback. Each month, we're going to randomly select people who offered feedback and give them a free target ed session. The next drawing is going to be at the end of June. Completing the feedback form should take less than 3 minutes. We read and share all of your feedback to ensure we continue to deliver the best content possible. Lastly, one final reminder, we're going to provide you with the slides and the webinar recording. These will arrive through your webinar registration email by Wednesday of next week. Now, that's everything I have, Matt. I want to say thanks one more time for sharing your expertise. Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, like I said, check out Nonprofit.Courses. There is a lot there for you. Really trying to make it a website that I would want to go to when I was in your shoes, so that you educationally can make the most of everything you do. Because I saw so many great missions out there, and I'd like to see as many succeed as possible. This is kind of my way of getting that to happen.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com. your fast track to funding and online education.